What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're going to be revisiting the topic of Yolanda Saldivar. The reason why we're revisiting this topic is because she is due for parole in March 30th of this year. Now, her legal team has already filed for a petition for her to get parole, and it's something that takes about 6 months. So we're honestly going to find out any day now whether or not she was approved for parole or not. The context that I'm making this video is that oftentimes similar cases like Yolanda Saldivar are tried in the court of public opinion. Even though we are supposed to have a fair and just judicial system, obviously we have our jury, we have our legislation that's supposed to be unbiased. Oftentimes, those things can get influenced by outside forces. So what I wanted to figure out for today's video was, what is the true story of Yolanda Saldivar? I've also heard her 5 hours of negotiation tapes after she had killed Selena, and have read through different testimonies, watched various different interviews of hers to get a better understanding of what is truly the case for Yolanda Saldivar. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to walk us through is what was Yolanda's state of mind in March of 1995, which was the month that she had killed Selena. So there are various different reports, some by the Quintanilla family, more specifically Abraham Quintanilla, that say that Yolanda Saldivar is this disgruntled employee and that she is an obsessive fan of Selena's, that somehow weaseled her way into Selena's inner circles all the way up to working with her and then eventually obviously killing Selena. And what I wanted to investigate about this was Yolanda's claim that she herself was actually suicidal at this time true or not? What I was able to find was that there was a lot of truth to this actually. After Selena was murdered, what the hotel employees were able to find inside of a safe at the Days Inn motel was Yolanda's purse, and inside of that purse was a note that Yolanda, or a poem that Yolanda had written, and this poem basically states the following. It's in Spanish, so I'm gonna translate a little bit of this. Este corazón que aún te quiere ya está muriendo tarde con tarde. Como se muere la luz del día, ya no puedo más. Tú me haces falta. Vuelve conmigo, alma de mi alma, vividita mía. ¿A dónde estás? ¿A dónde estás? Mátame cielo, trágame tierra. Quiero morirme, si no vuelve más. What this basically summarizes to is that her heart is dying day after day, and that she's begging for her soul to be returned back to her. And if it's not able to be returned back to her, she wants the sky to kill her, the earth to swallow her, and she basically wants to die. From this note, we're able to see that Yolanda does have suicidal ideations at the time of Selena's murder. Now, like I said, this is Yolanda's story for why she ends up purchasing the gun. What I do want to say is that Yolanda does tend to flip-flop in terms of the purpose of purchasing this gun. On some occasions, Yolanda says that she purchased the gun in order to protect herself against Abraham Quintanilla and his associates.
Why did you decide you needed a gun?
It was after threats had been made against my life.
Who threatened you?
Her father.
And in other circumstances, she does say that she purchased the gun to kill herself.
All of that.
You were going to kill yourself?
Yes.
There is also a famous interview by 2020 where Yolanda is talking to the interviewer about the events that led up to Selena's murder. And what I find interesting about this interview is that afterwards there's an expert that looks at that interview and describes what can kind of happen with people with Yolanda's personality types. Is there's almost this role reversal.
Yeah, sometimes there's a reversal in these cases of roles. And what we may be seeing here is the person that's about to be abandoned, in order to understand it or justify it in her own mind, becomes the person in the position of doing the abandoning.
For example, Yolanda explains that Selena was begging for Yolanda to stay employed to her, and that this was something that potentially Yolanda was in fact doing towards Selena.
She went down, she grabbed my feet and told me not to leave her.
The other thing that was interesting too was that this interviewer asked Yolanda if there was something that you could do differently that day, what would you do differently? And instead of Yolanda saying something like, I wish that Selena wasn't hurt, or I wish I didn't kill Selena, or that the gun didn't go off by accident, she says that I wish Selena would have killed me.
If you could go back and do something differently on that morning of March 31st, what would you do?
I would want her to kill me.
Which shows that maybe during this time, Yolanda believed that death was imminent for one of the two, whether it was her, whether it was Selena. she wishes that something would have happened to her. The other evidence that we could see towards Yolanda's mental health during this time was obviously the negotiation that transpired after Yolanda had killed Selena. Now, I do want to know that the total negotiation time for Yolanda was 9 to 10 hours, but the tapes were only able to capture about 5 hours of those. The other interesting thing about these tapes is that for the first hour and a half of the tapes, Yolanda did not know that Selena was dead. She later hears on the tape itself that Selena dies.
Allegedly shot Quintanilla is in a car parked.
I'm so anxious right now. I'll dial the phone number for you.
Quintanilla was rushed to the medical center where she was pronounced dead earlier this afternoon.
You know that?
Quintanilla, who grew up in Corpus Christi, was 23 years old.
And then the later 3.5 hours is Yolanda speaking with the knowledge that Selena has died. With that being said, I'm going to show you different parts of the tapes. And these are all statements that Yolanda had made while she did not know that Selena was dead. Right, so in the first tape, you can hear Yolanda saying, "Look at what I did to my best friend," obviously showing remorse for something that she had done.
I don't deserve to live. Yes, you do. Look what I done to my best friend.
She also says in one of the first tapes when the negotiator asked her if she's scared, she says she's not scared, but that she is embarrassed for what she had done.
Let me ask you something. Are you there, Yolanda? What are you afraid of? Why don't you want to get out of the truck?
I'm not afraid of. I'm just embarrassed.
You're embarrassed?
I'm very embarrassed about everything that just happened.
Okay.
Yolanda also states that she wants to talk to John, who is one of the police that's on site.
And the policemen that are outside, they can cover and keep you from being seen and stuff by anybody else. The cameras are so far away, they'll never make you out anyway.
I want to talk to John.
Who's John?
John is the policeman.
John the policeman?
And Joe.
Now, I feel like this can go in various different ways, but the way that I interpreted this is that Yolanda is seemingly wanting to clear her name. At this time, she's not exactly worried about Selena's state of being, or she's not necessarily worried about having shot Selena. And I don't necessarily think that that is completely out of self-indulgence or narcissism. I actually think that what this kind of shows me is that she doesn't believe that what she had done, although she had shot Selena, was going to be something that would have eventually killed Selena. She also later states in that first tape, she'll never be forgiven.
I did some things that were wrong.
We all have done things that have been wrong. I've done things that have been wrong.
And I'll never be forgiven ever in my entire life.
That's up to God to forgive, and God does forgive.
And when the negotiator mentions to her, like, hey, you're a nurse, there's people that love you, which are common things that negotiators do to get you from killing yourself. She says that, yeah, I am a nurse. I should have known better than to do something like this.
What kind of work do you do, Yolanda?
I'm a registered nurse.
You're a nurse?
Yes.
Golly, that's fantastic. That's great.
No, it's not, because I should know better. And I didn't know better.
Well,
I didn't know better.
we all make mistakes.
And the part that I feel is most telling about Yolanda and her actions is just before she hears the news that Selena has died on the radio, she says that Abraham Quintanilla had pushed her to do this. Therefore, in my view, she is admitting some sort of fault.
I'm not just telling you this.
You don't know what I'm going through, Larry.
No, baby, I don't know what you're going through. I can only believe what you're telling me, and I do believe with all my heart that this man has been doing you very wrong.
You know.
And I know this isn't your fault. And I know that you're scared and you're tired. Huh?
He pushed me to this.
I know, baby. I know he did.
Now, I feel like it's important to mention that Yolanda was convicted of a first-degree murder. And from my opinion, I do feel as though a second-degree murder charge is a little bit more in alignment with what she had done. The distinction between a first-degree murder is a premeditated murder, where it's like you plan something, you carry it out, and then, like, obviously the person dies as a result of it. A second-degree murder could be just a heat of passion murder, which is like emotions are high, anger is present, something like that, and a person does commit murder. They are intending to do it, but it's not necessarily premeditated, and the time in prison spent for a first-degree murder is almost double the time of a second-degree murder. I think it's 30 years, which is what Yolanda ended up getting as like the maximum sentence, and then 15 years for a second-degree murder. Now, other claims that Yolanda makes after she finds out that Selena is dead is she makes claims against Abraham Quintanilla. In one side, she says that Abraham Quintanilla had sexually assaulted her. In another claim, she states that Abraham Quintanilla had sent his associates or was somewhat involved in threatening her, slashing her tires, doing different things that were putting a threat to her life.
Anybody, not even do.
I know it hurts. I know it hurts a lot, baby.
And you know what he did?
What did he do, baby?
He's stuck in me. He's stuck in me.
He did what?
He's stuck in my vagina.
I can't hear you, baby.
He's stuck in my
He stuck a knife in you?
Yes, when he raped me about a month and a half ago, and he told me, if you tell anybody, I will kill you and your parents. I will kill you.
Who raped you?
Her mother!
Abraham did?
Yes.
You got to let them know about this.
Apartment.
We got to let people know about this. We got to let the investigators know about this. We got to go down and let them investigate. We got to file charges.
Larry, listen to me.
I'm listening.
He told me he would kill my parents. He has done some things in the past for other people.
Well, let's get
And I
it done.
believe him.
She also does claim within these tapes that she purchased the gun to kill herself. And then she also does claim that Selena's father did not want her to have a relationship with Yolanda, that Selena was kind of sneaking, meeting with her in like these hotels, which seems like it could be a possibility because Yolanda does appear in different hotels through the month of like February, March, and they meet at those hotels to discuss business, to hand over business documents. So it does seem like there could be truth within that.
He let me do all of this.
What? He made you do all this?
He let me do all this. He threw me out of the house. He threw me out of her life. Él me andaba escondiendo porque no quería que su papá me fuera a culpar. Ella me andaba escondiendo de donde quiera. Ella no quería que yo...
Selena?
Selena me andaba escondiendo. No quería que su papá supiera. Ella 3 veces me escondió en los hoteles porque dijo que su papá tenía miedo que su papá me fuera a matar.
Christie?
Yes. I stayed at the Budget Inn, and then I stayed again at the Bayfront Inn. Y ahora me dijo que viniera para acá para Days Inn. She didn't want me to get her father to know.
Now, the other thing that I want to show you guys is Yolanda's original confession that she made the day of the murder. So if you guys can recall, during the day of the murder, she claims that she was not able to sleep the night before. The morning of, she's taken to the hospital by Selena because she claims that she was raped while she was in Monterrey, Mexico. When they come back to the hotels, when they have the argument and she shoots Selena, and then there's a negotiation with Yolanda and the police department for Yolanda not to commit suicide for the next 10 hours. And then after this, on the same day, is when Yolanda goes to the police department and gives this voluntary confession. Within this confession, it's very telling what she describes as the chain of events. She started dumping all the files on the bed from the briefcase or handbag that I had. I took a gun from my purse, which I had bought almost 2 weeks ago in San Antonio for $250. I bought the pistol at a place called Place to Shoot, located on Morrison Boulevard in San Antonio. The gun holds 5 bullets. I took the gun from my purse and Selena started walking towards the door, which was open. I pulled the hammer back and I shot at her as she was walking towards the door, which was open. Selena took off running and I didn't know where she went. I got scared and I got in my truck and I drove around the parking lot looking for her. I could not find her and I parked on the other side of the parking lot. A police officer approached my truck and I put the gun to my head. So what we can see from this testimony is that there is an intention to kill. The other thing that I want to say the reason why I ran through like the chain of events really quickly was that it was a long day for Yolanda, and I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt of saying that, hey, maybe she wasn't in the best mental health space. Obviously, she had just threatened to commit suicide. It was a long ass day for her. But what I find interesting about her confession is that you can see actually that she makes edits to the confession in pen. Even when she's describing like Selena walking towards the door, she fixes the grammatical error there and adds like the ing. And we can see this is the same pen that she uses to sign her name. And also in testimony that's provided by the police during the trial, they say that she had wanted to go back and edit her confession after she had already submitted it to add the words like accidentally shot Selena. The other thing about her testimony saying that the door was open, that Selena was walking out, she also kind of flip-flops on this when she does interviews. In some interviews, she states that the door was closed and that Selena was going to go open it, and she was pointing the gun towards Selena saying, do not open that door, and it accidentally went off. And then in other interviews, she's saying that the door was open the whole time and that Selena was going to go close the door and that she was saying, don't close that door, and the gun went off.
Mom, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this. I'm gonna close the door.
And what I find odd about this is it's kind of like one of those things that you don't have to necessarily lie about. And if for some reason you kind of got it confused, like why not correct yourself in another interview saying like, hey, actually I said it this, but it actually wasn't that. She never has that kind of a moment of like self-awareness to say like, it's actually not that, it's actually this, and I'm correcting it now. But she just tends to flip-flop. And I find this to kind of be the case about other stuff. So like I said, I want to give Yolanda a very fair trial in my court of opinion. But it's kind of hard sometimes because she really does change her story quite often. It's hard to know like what exactly transpired. I'm very keen on the details. Now, the other thing that I wanted to discuss briefly was actually this question of Yolanda's sexuality. Now, I had no intention to include this in the video originally, but I kind of started to see this come up over and over to the point that it made me feel like, wait, maybe there is really something here. What I noticed also in Yolanda's written confession, this claim of being a lesbian mentioned twice alongside the claim of embezzlement. So what that showed for me was that this claim of being a lesbian carried almost the same weight to her as this claim of being an embezzler. I'm going to read you her original confession. During the first week of February of this year, 1985, her father Abraham told Selena that I was a lesbian while we were in Miami, Florida. Her father also told her that I was stealing money from the company. Her father, Abraham Quintanilla, was putting a lot of pressure on Selena, and Selena suggested that we stay away from each other so her father wouldn't get mad. Yolanda also mentions that after they had gone to the hospital, on their way back to the hotel, they have another conversation. And in this conversation, Yolanda says, as she was driving me back to the motel in her truck, she told me that her father told her that the papers I had brought from Monterey were wrong and that her father had said that I was a lesbian. I got mad and I told her that I did not want to work for her anymore. Additionally, I also see in interviews of Yolanda where the interviewer asks her what was the relationship between her and Selena. And in this interview, Yolanda says, no fan of Selena would think that of her, which I think is a very interesting way to dispel a rumor.
There were allegations that you were in love with her.
And that's not true either. And if people think that Selena and I had a lesbian relationship, you're not a fan of Selena.
It doesn't discredit a rumor in its entirety. Like Yolanda could just say like, no, we're not lesbians. Neither one of us were lesbians. We're not in a relationship. She instead says, if you are a fan of Selena, you would not think that of her. Which, like I said, it doesn't necessarily dispel in its entirety the rumor. What I also looked into super briefly was Yolanda's love life. I checked to see, like, has she been married before? Has she dated? Because surely there are a lot of people that actually are interested in dating people who are currently in prison, who have been convicted of crimes. I mean, Gypsy Rose got married while she was behind bars. So I was like, okay, Yolanda probably could also find somebody to marry or date or whatever, but nobody has necessarily claimed her. And I think that it doesn't necessarily have to happen, but it also doesn't necessarily make me feel like, okay, yeah, Yolanda, like, no, of course this claim like is just completely bogus. What I also think is interesting too in that 2020 interview, and also in other interviews, Yolanda claims that she was holding a secret of Selena and that Selena was worried that if they no longer worked together, that Yolanda would release the secret to the public, and Yolanda has always held this secret of Selena's and never shared it. If we could think back to that expert's analysis of Yolanda's interview, which is that Yolanda kind of reverses roles with Selena at some point during that conversation, we could think that this could also be a possibility of Yolanda, where it's like she actually has this secret herself, and potentially she does not want that to come out to the public, and maybe she's the one that's worried that if she no longer works with Selena, this secret's gonna come out to everybody.
If you don't stay with me, I know you're gonna come out. You're gonna be telling everybody about what was going on with the doctor. I felt like, how dare you accuse me when I've kept all your secrets?
I also want to talk about the obsessive nature that Selena grew up in. So it seems as though from accounts of journalists and other people who have worked with Abraham Quintanilla when Selena was alive and also after Selena had passed away, that Abraham Quintanilla seems to be somebody who is super involved and super controlling of Selena from a business standpoint. Like we saw in the movie, obviously Abraham Quintanilla did not want his daughter to be wearing the bustier, but it also can be seen that Abraham Quintanilla has taken a lot of people to court over using Selena's images, using her likeness. And it also seems while Selena was alive that Abraham Quintanilla had a very strong hold on Selena's career. Selena, etc. is referenced as a venture that Selena had taken for herself to pursue that was completely outside of music, that was completely outside of her family's dealings, more specifically Abraham Quintanilla, and that she wanted this venture to succeed on its own. It's also reported too that in the year that Selena died and the year before that, Selena was like the top 17 or 18 Hispanic earner, earning about $5 million a year. But at the time that Selena had died, her and Chris Perez's, her husband at the time, their financial documents were audited, and they found that they only had about like $300,000 because it was believed that Abraham Quintanilla was dividing Selena's money up against his family and also like giving himself a certain percentage of that earning. So if anything, Selena was pursuing this Selena Inc. business / boutique so that she could earn money for herself, because she wasn't necessarily earning the full earnings of what she was getting from her music, from her touring. Now, the other claim that I wanted to investigate was this claim of embezzlement. Now, I am now of the mindset that this is something that could potentially still be true. In Yolanda's documentary, Selena and Yolanda, The Secrets Between Them, she references that she was never taken to court for embezzlement. And because Abraham Quintanilla is somebody who readily sues people, it seemed odd to some people that he has never taken Yolanda to court for those claims. What I believe is behind Abraham Quintanilla not taking Yolanda to court over the embezzlement claims is actually not because he can't prove it against her, but I feel like there's a more self-indulgent purpose for this. Now, the claims about Yolanda stealing money from fan club, I don't believe that that is something that has a lot of weight. We can see from different articles related to the case that there are messages from fans or parents that are saying like, hey, like my kid did not receive their little welcome package for joining Selena's fan club. But these messages date to 1992, 1993, which were all years that, yes, Yolanda was involved in the fan club. But starting in 1994, Yolanda was no longer involved with Selena's fan club, but she was involved with Selena, etc. So those records that are provided, while they could potentially allude to the fact that Yolanda could be taking money or could be like, you know, it's like a $20 fee, it doesn't necessarily seem like it lines up with Abraham Quintanilla's story of receiving these phone calls from these fans that they're missing funds. Because even if they had been missing their little welcome package, Yolanda wasn't involved in the day-to-day operations of the fan club anymore by that point. And the reason why I describe Abraham Quintanilla not taking Yolanda to court over the embezzlement claims as self-indulgent is because after the murder of Selena, the court went to go file subpoenas for different members, different institutions. Some of those included Abraham Quintanilla and his businesses, and also the Selena etc. boutique. Now, you would think if your claim is that Yolanda is this embezzler and she stole money from the court, that at least you would give the court access to subpoena the Selena etc. boutique, because that's the main source that Yolanda was supposedly taking money from. But actually what I was able to find through the court filings was that there were several different motions to squash the subpoena, all filed by Abraham Quintanilla Jr. Now I'm going to read you a little excerpt of this motion to squash the subpoena. Movant Abraham Quintanilla Jr. moves to squash 7 additional subpoenas issued July 27, 1995. I'm going to skip ahead. For copies of any and all records of Selena Fan Club, including but not limited to the Blue Book of the Fan Club, copies of any and all articles of incorporation for Selena etc. Inc., together with copies of any and all minutes of meetings of said corporation, copies of any and all records, documents, or summaries upon which a claim can be made that defendant Yolanda Saldivar was embezzling money from the deceased Selena Quintanilla and or her fan club, her business enterprise, and or Q Productions, as overly broad, vague, burdensome, and oppressive. Now that's the reasoning why they're motioning to suppress the subpoena, because they're saying that this is an overly broad request. But they are also filing multiple different motions. And the reason why, like I said, I believe that it's more self-indulgent is because 2 years after the death of Selena, the IRS sued Abraham Quintanilla. I'm going to read you an excerpt from a Billboard article. 2 years later, the IRS sued Quintanilla and his wife for fraudulently underreporting Selena's profits by more than $1 million and inflating her expenses while she was alive. To settle the case, they paid $866 in back taxes and penalties. So I believe the motion to squash the subpoena was actually more due to the fact that Abraham Quintanilla was like, wait, if they subpoena us, they're actually going to find that we were the ones that were taking money. Maybe it wasn't the fact that Yolanda wasn't taking money, but they knew for sure that they were up to some shady business and they did not want to be subpoenaed and be discovered of doing something like this. What I also found interesting, so I went to go verify to make sure that this article didn't just say some random things. I didn't see this Billboard article citing any specific location. So I actually checked myself in the US tax court to see if there was any case related to the IRS and any like taxes owed. What I actually found was something that was not even mentioned in that Billboard article, was that Abraham Quintanilla Jr. was also listed here under the tax court the following year. So we could see here that we have Abraham Quintanilla, who, like the Billboard article stated, was sued by the IRS in 1997. And then we also see under this, Abraham Quintanilla Jr. and Evangelina Quintanilla were sued the year after that by the IRS. So we see both of these records existing here. Now, like I said, they were not able to prove that Yolanda was embezzling funds. In fact, in the defendant's closing statement, Yolanda's lawyer states, Daniel, CPA of all Selena's enterprises, was never asked to testify because the prosecution could not prove that there was embezzlement. So Yolanda does use this as a point for herself to say like, hey, they could never prove this. In her documentary, Selena and Yolanda, The Secrets Between Them, she mentions this again. They could not prove this. I think this is something that Yolanda knows that, one, maybe they can prove or maybe they can't prove it, but at least she's playing on the fact that she knows that they probably don't want to prove it. And from that side, it's definitely ammunition for her to say, hey, this didn't happen. We do see that there are checks that were written from Yolanda to herself, but I do want to say too that Yolanda was assisting Selena with opening up Selena Inc. in Monterrey, Mexico, so she potentially was writing checks to reimburse herself. Even in her letter of resignation, Yolanda states that Selena would owe her her last paycheck, which was around $900, and also her phone bill, which is around $300. And I saw that most checks written from her to her were about that quantity, like $300, $400. I'm going to read you the letter of resignation, that little piece. I am requesting that Ms. Saldivar be paid her outstanding phone bill in the amount of $349 and no over $100. 4 business phone calls made to Monterrey, Mexico, and her salary in the amount of $900 and no over $100. All money should be sent to my offices. but be payable to Yolanda Saldivar. So we can see here that it does seem as though like reimbursement is kind of a thing that happens. Maybe there's something that has to do with like having an international bank account and just wanting to make sure to move money a certain way. These are things that could be common in business practices, especially when you're just like a startup business. All right, now I want to move on to talk about the questionable witnesses. Now, the reason why I want to talk about these witnesses is not to dispel the fact that Yolanda did kill Selena, because we know that that happened and it's a tragedy. Any way that you spin it, it's the saddest thing, because Selena should be here with us to this day. But I do want to talk about these witnesses because I do feel like they benefited from some level of being involved in this case. The witnesses' testimonies, some of these were sensationalized to the point where they were added in TV series, documentaries, movies that were made about Selena's death that were verifiably kind of not true. The first witness statement that I want to talk about is Shauna Vela, who's the receptionist. Shauna Vela is the one that claims that Selena had told her that Yolanda was the one that killed her, that her famous last words were Yolanda, room 158, as citing the person that killed her and where she was staying. And she also claimed that Selena told her that Yolanda was chasing her into the lobby. Now, there are two testimonies that contradict this testimony. The first is Barbara Schultz, which is the manager of the hotel. She claims that when she had come out to the hotel lobby, that Shauna Vela was in another section of the lobby making a 911 phone call. At the time, she didn't know it was a 911 phone call, but she said that Shauna Vela was like away from Selena. The other testimony is by Ruben De Leon, who says that he was the one that actually Selena had bumped into, and he was the one that was treating Selena right there on the spot. He wasn't necessarily aware of where Shauna Vela was during that time, that she could maybe be close, but it shows to me that Ruben De Leon is the person that was physically there with Selena, talking to her, trying to assist her. I'm going to read you some of his testimony. Tinker asks, did you ever convey information to Shauna Vela, desk clerk? De Leon, when Selena was on the ground, I was asking her who shot her. Tinker, do you recollect Shauna was ever in the area where Selena was? De Leon, not to my recollection. Tinker, Shauna never did come over to listen to what Selena was saying. De Leon, I was not really looking at her. Tinker, she was never over there close to hear what Selena was saying? De Leon, no sir. Tinker, Selena never said Yolanda Saldivar? De Leon, to me, no sir. Now the other testimony is by Norma Marie Martinez. Norma Marie Martinez interestingly gave two different testimonies, the day of the murder and then also obviously while she was on the witness stand. Norma Martinez is the person that claims that she saw Yolanda pointing the gun at Selena, chasing her, and then calling her a bitch, which, like I said, is famously mentioned in documentaries, in TV shows. In Norma Martinez's original testimony, she does not mention that Yolanda was yelling the word bitch to her at all. I'm going to read you her testimony. Today, March 31st, 1995, I was working cleaning room 128 on the first floor, and as I turned around in the doorway, I saw two girls running, and one had a gun in her right hand. They were running from room 158, first floor, toward the swimming pool. The one running in front was yelling for help. I later recognized her as Selena the singer. The one chasing Selena was a Hispanic lady and was about 5 or 6 yards away from Selena. As she was chasing Selena, she pointed a gun at her and shot her in the back. Selena did not have any weapons or anything in her hands. Selena kept running and the lady chased her to the front office. After the lady shot Selena, she walked back to the room 158 as if nothing had happened. She stood by the door and was holding the gun in her right hand. I ran to the office and I saw Selena lying down on the floor in the front lobby where people register for rooms. So, like I said, in this testimony, there is no mention of the word bitch. The other thing that I want to mention about Norma Martinez, as she states herself, she was in room 128. I'm going to show you a photo of the blueprint of the hotel. You could see room 158 is where Selena and Yolanda were arguing. And we can also see room 128, which is almost across the other side of the hotel. What I find interesting about Norma Martinez's account is that she's inside the room cleaning and she hears a commotion and she's able to see from that vantage point Yolanda chasing Selena out of the room and pointing the gun at her. And maybe at some point she had come out of the room to look at what was going on. But notably, she also mentions that Selena was not holding anything in her hands. From what we can see from the crime scene photos, we know that Selena had left with a little briefcase holding a bunch of folders. her phone, also her Chanel bag, which she kind of dropped on the way en route to the lobby. So it's my thinking that this housekeeper, Norma Martinez, probably saw Selena more towards the part where she was already kind of crossing all the way towards the lobby and didn't actually see this interaction between Yolanda and Selena. The other thing to note too is that Selena verifiably was shot in the doorway because there's blood splatter along the door. So if Norma Martinez was able to see Selena get shot, she would have had to have been directly in front of the hotel room to be able to see inside of the hotel room Yolanda shooting her from the back. The other thing about Norma Martinez's claim that Yolanda was chasing her, I think that I wouldn't say it could be a fabrication, but I think it could be maybe a misrepresentation of what was going on. We know from Yolanda's own testimony that she had gone to her car after she shot Selena and had driven to the front parking lot. From the blueprint of the hotel, we can see that the parking lot is located in front of the hotel rooms, obviously right next to the pool, which is in alignment with the route that Selena took to get to the lobby. So Yolanda following Selena could be maybe misrepresented as Yolanda going to her car to then go look for Selena, because Yolanda also seemingly doesn't try to escape. She makes no attempt at running away. She does drive in her car, but she parks at the front of the hotel. So like I said, in my opinion, all of these things show that it was of course a murder, but it was a murder of maybe a second degree, because if it was a premeditated murder, this is honestly a pretty bad murder job. Even in cases where the murder is not executed properly, you see some attempt of the suspect or the perpetrator trying to get away with it to some degree, like they try to run away. For example, in the OJ murder, which potentially could not be a murder, but you see something like that happening. Or you see the person, planning it like ahead of time and trying to pass it off like, oh, I didn't even know this person was missing. But in Yolanda's case, like, she doesn't make those kind of same attempts. She's in the premise. She doesn't really try to run away. The police do arrive shortly after that. She's kind of accepted something that she has done in that moment. All right, the very last part that I want to talk about is the closing arguments that are made from both the defense and the prosecutor's side. I want to talk a little bit about this timeline, because for me, I feel like this was not the first time that actually Yolanda potentially could have used the gun to threaten suicide against herself.
Do you think that she would want Buffy to hurt herself? Do you think so?
No, she always tell me no. Don't ever take your life, Yolanda, never. Because we'll never see each other in any other life.
All right, so March 10th is the date that Yolanda has that meeting with Abraham Quintanilla, and he basically kicks her out. March 11th is when Yolanda goes to purchase the gun from the store, but because of certain regulations, she isn't able to pick up the gun until March 13th. From the defense's closing arguments, they state that Yolanda sent a letter of resignation to Selena on March 13th. So March 13th is the date that Yolanda sends the letter of resignation to Selena, and it's also the date that she picks up the gun. Now, March 15th is when Yolanda takes the gun back to the store. Now, why I felt like this is interesting, why would someone take a gun back to the store? Initially, I couldn't place why this could happen until I started thinking a little bit about the encounter that ended up happening, obviously, on March 31st, which is that Yolanda potentially could have used the gun at that point on March 13th to threaten suicide against herself. And because she was able to retain her job, she was able to return the gun back because she thought she was going to continue working with Selena. Because why would Abraham, quote unquote, fire you on the 10th and then you also are resigning on the 13th, which is the day you picked up the gun, and then you return the gun back and now you continue working for her? So it's like, if there's a desire from Abraham's side / Selena's side to fire you, and there's a desire from your side internally to quit, why would you then still remain employed with Selena? March 16th, we see that Selena is in Mexico with Yolanda, and according to some testimonies that are done by the different employees of Selena, etc., they say that Selena was kind of trying to get rid of Yolanda, but because Yolanda was very ingrained with opening the store up in Mexico, she couldn't fully dissolve herself of Yolanda, and that Yolanda used like the store in Mexico as kind of like a last-ditch effort to maintain a relationship with Selena. Now, it's my belief that March 31st, which is obviously the day that Selena had been murdered, that Yolanda had made every attempt to try to keep Selena in her life. She had said that she was raped in Mexico, which notably in her documentary, she doesn't mention this. She mentions an assault that happens in a Whataburger on the way back from Mexico to the US. The doctor does know that there are bruises on Yolanda, so I feel like there could be a truth to her actually being assaulted, but she maybe, sensationalized this assault to be a little bit more so that she can get the sympathy from Selena. Notably too, in Yolanda's negotiation tapes, she does say that she was sad that she was going to be losing her friend.
Yolanda, you were talking about the only friend you ever had. Who was that?
That's my only friend. That's my only friend.
What was your only friend's name?
I don't want to tell you.
You don't want to tell me?
No, but it was my only friend.
Okay.
I don't even have her. I don't even have her. I don't even have anybody. I'm all by myself.
And this is something that she actually states before she knows that Selena has died. So to her, again, with the knowledge of what she had done, before the knowledge that she knew that she had killed her, she knew that she was losing her friend. And what that meant was maybe cutting ties business-wise, cutting ties friendship-wise. And for that reason, in the past where Yolanda threatened suicide against herself and it did work, this time, March 31st, she tried it again and it did not work. And then she shot Selena in that moment, deciding that, okay, fine, if it's not going to be me, then it is going to be you. The question stands if Yolanda deserves to be let out on parole. A lot of people feel as though because she has already served her time, it is time for her to be let out and to just reacclimate to life. I think one thing that a lot of people do want to see is that Yolanda apologizes for her actions, which some people claim that she never has. I was able to actually find an interview in Spanish that Yolanda did apologize to Selena's mom directly.
Miss Quintanilla, dentro de mi corazón, te pido perdón por todo lo que he hecho. Pero quiero decirle que yo, el 22 de enero, yo le quise dar saber a usted lo que estaba tramitando Selena.
I feel like my personal recommendation in looking into this story is for Yolanda to admit her faults, for Yolanda to obviously issue a full apology to the family for the loss that they have garnered. It does seem clear that Yolanda did have a very, very personal and close relationship with Selena, and that Selena mattered to her a lot. I don't deny that at all, and nobody could really understand the dynamics between that relationship. But it's also important to just acknowledge the fans, the family, all the people that lost Selena too, and also to tell the truth about the story. Like I said, there's been so many versions, so many flip-flops of this story. Yolanda serving her time, I think, should have done her enough for her to be like, you know what, okay, I'm just gonna admit to whatever it is. It was like, she was found guilty of murder in the first degree. I don't feel like she had a lot to lose by that point to just say like, yeah, I did do it. It was a fit of rage. I regret doing this. I've owned my mistakes. It was an accident in the sense of I didn't come there with the intention to do it, but I was blinded by the rage that I had in that moment. And I just wish that there was more ownership on her part, because even as I was investigating this video and I wanted to give her the best kind of analysis to be able to judge her fairly, I was like, I was torn because I was like, she's kind of painting herself to be a certain way. She's painting herself to not be remorseful of something that she had done. What I see a lot of people mention about Yolanda is that she's safer inside of prison than outside of prison, or people jokingly saying that they're going to like beat her up, assault her. I think I want everyone to just kind of reflect internally on those comments and how easily we as humans can almost even sensationalize violence in our own lives. If you're someone who feels like I would beat up Yolanda, I would kill Yolanda myself, then I feel like you really should kind of look internally to see like, wait, maybe violence and these kinds of negative acts are actually something that is really vulnerable and fragile of like the human experience. So I just want a little bit of self-reflection on that aspect. Like, if Yolanda is released, she is entitled to her life. Nobody's entitled to take that away from her, and nobody can justify, you can't justify your own actions of violence just because she also did something too. Like, if you are committing a violent act with someone, you are doing something violent. Anyways, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I want to hear what are your guys' thoughts on Yolanda Saldivar. I already know from my previous video that a lot of you guys were absolutely no on releasing her. Please tune in for the next one. Otherwise, subscribe so I can keep doing these kinds of videos. Bye everybody.